In football, struggling away from home isn't new. It's a challenge teams have faced for decades. The crowd, the pressure, the travel, all of it can turn even the strongest teams into shadows of themselves. In this video, we're diving into Europe's top 5 leagues to uncover which teams struggled the most away from home in the 2024-2025 season, when compared to how well they performed at home. So let's dig into the data and find out what went wrong and why. For the data, my top 5 leagues in Europe are the Bundesliga, the La Liga, the Ligue 1, the Premier League, and the Serie A. And for each league, I have a CSV file containing every team's season stats for that league, for both their home matches and as well as their away matches. So I have that for each league. So in total, I have 10 different data sets. Instead of having 10 of these data frames, I just want to have one data frame for each league. So what I can do is, for example, create a data frame called PLDF and set it equal to PL home DF, and then merge it with the away data frame. And we'll be merging it on the squad column. And then for suffixes, I'm going to add suffixes for columns to differentiate which columns are for home and which columns are represent the away stats. We can see now we have merged the home and away data frames, so that for the league we have basically just one data frame. And we can see, for example, here we have matches played home. So this is like the suffixes. So for example, this is how many wins they have at home, so that we can differentiate how many wins they have at home versus away. So here they have losses at home, and this is how many losses they have away. So the two home and away data sets are basically merged here into one. So I'm going to do the same thing for all the other 4 leagues. The next thing I want to do is just define a list of all the data frames we created up here. So we have like the PLDF, we have La Liga, DF, what else? Serie A, Bundesliga, and Ligue 1. It's a French league. The reason I need this list is because it just makes it easier to basically do a bunch of operations on all the 5 leagues rather than doing it manually for each league. So an example of that is, for example, we can loop through this list and calculate a new row or new columns called, for example, we can call it goals for difference, and this would calculate the difference between how many goals a team scored at home versus how many goals a team scored away. So all we need to do is basically just get the goals for at home and subtract it from the goals for away, and that will get us the difference. So I don't have to go through each league and do this manually. I can just create the list and then I can loop through that list, and this would do it for all the 5 leagues for each team. And then I also want to get the amount of goals conceded, which is goals against. So we can just do the same thing. And then the last thing is I want to calculate the points difference. For example, let's go to like the Premier League data frame. Here we have our new columns that we created. It's called goals for difference, goals against difference, and the points difference. The next thing I've done is I've created some charts using this code. So I'm still using that DF list. So this generates a chart for each league. And what it generates is the chart of the amount of goals a team scored at home versus the amount of goals they scored away. So for example, Liverpool and Arsenal in the Premier League, they score roughly the same amount of goals at home and away. which makes them, the top two teams in the Premier League. Man City, they score more goals at home, looks like. Same with Chelsea, Newcastle, Aston Villa. Whereas Nottingham Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth, they score more goals actually away from home. And we can see the same thing in the La Liga, same chart, except obviously different data. We can see Villarreal score more goals at home. Osasuna scores more goals at home. Valencia, Sevilla score more goals away. Alaves score more goals away. Looks like almost double. I've also done the same exact thing for the amount of goals a team conceded at home versus away. So we can see, for example, looks like Premier League teams like Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, they get conceded way more at away compared to at home. So it looks like more teams get concede more goals away from home compared to home. These next charts are a bit more interesting and actually more useful for our analysis because we will be using the points as a way of measuring performance for each team. So basically we're going to be seeing in this analysis which team gets the least amount of points away from home compared to their actual home amount of points they received. So this chart is pretty important because this shows the points difference home versus away. So for example, we can see teams like Aston Villa, they got 14 more points at home compared to away. So if it's red, this means they got more points away from home. And on this side, it means they got more points at home compared to away. So we can see teams like Chelsea, Man City, Aston Villa, they get way more points at home compared to away. So it looks like they have their home advantage is bigger. Whereas teams like Ipswich Town, they actually get more points away from home compared to the amount of points they get at home. So it looks like the home advantage for them is not as visible. And then teams like Bournemouth, Everton, Southampton, Wolves, there's nothing here because this means that they get the same amount of points at home versus away. So for them, the home advantage doesn't look like they exist, and they don't look like their away form depreciates because they play at away. So now that we've seen the visualization of this point differences, now I just want to see this in numbers so it's more clear. So we can loop through the list that we defined earlier. So you can see it's a very useful list because we've done it over and used this list over and over again. And so we're first going to get the name from each, the name of the team from each league with the highest point differences. So it's called the point diff, and we're just gonna get basically the index with the max value. So the max value represents that the team got more points at home because it's positive. If it was negative, that means the team got more points away from home. So we're looking at the max. So we just need to use the index max function, and then we need to get the squad name. So we just use squad. We need to actually print out the points. So we can get the max df, and then we just need to get the points difference. Okay, and close this. So let's see if this works. So what do these numbers represent? So this represents that in the Premier League, Aston Villa got the most amount of points at home compared to their amount of points they got away from home. So they got 14 more points at home compared to the amount of points they got away from home. So that's the max in the Premier League. In the La Liga, this shows that Osasuna got 20 more points at home compared to what they got away from home, which is the max in the La Liga. And the same thing for Fiorentina in the Serie A, and same thing for Dortmund in the Bundesliga, and same thing for Monaco in the Ligue 1. So, if you think about it, these teams looks like they have the biggest home advantage, or at the same time, their away performances are just also very bad because they get almost they get way more points at home compared to the amount of points they get away from home. And this is not saying that Aston Villa got the least amount of points away from home in the Premier League. This just represents that they got the least amount of points in the Premier League relative to the amount of points they got at home. So this actually shows that Aston Villa is probably the worst away team compared to their home performances. And the same for all these other four teams, which is what we're trying to find. We're not trying to find which is the, who got the least amount of points away from home, which is probably always the last place team. This is not what we're trying to find. We're trying to find the team that's the worst performing away from home relative to how they perform at home.
There is though one problem with looking at just the raw point difference. And the problem is that not all leagues are the same sizes. For example, the Ligue 1 and the Bundesliga have only 18 teams, meaning 17 home games and 17 away games, while leagues like the Premier League or La Liga or Serie A each have 20 teams. So that means they have 19 games played at home and 19 games away. That means a team in La Liga simply has more chances to earn or lose points just because they play more matches compared to a team in the Ligue 1 or the Bundesliga. So to make things fair and to compare across leagues properly, we normalize the data by calculating points per game. So to calculate this points per game difference instead of just the raw point difference, we can loop through the DF list like we always do and create a new column in each data frame called points per game difference. And basically the calculation will just be the amount of points at home divided by the matches played at home, so MP home, and then that will get us the points per game at home, and then we just need to subtract that from the points away and divide that by matches played away. Alright, and then we can just copy this same thing here.
So now we've calculated the points per game difference, and what does it mean? So here, for example, Aston Villa got points per game difference of 0.36, which means that they got, on average, 0.736 more points per game at home compared to away. So this is the max in the Premier League, because here we're using the max function. So for our video, this means that Aston Villa in the Premier League is the most home-reliant team, or how can I say, they probably have the worst away form compared to their home form, because they're getting so much more points at home compared to away. But the biggest difference here after normalizing this data is between Fiorentina and Dortmund. As you can see here, for the raw point difference, they both had 15 points. However, after doing the normalization and calculating points per game difference, we can see some differentiation here. And Fiorentina they have less points per game difference, even though they get the same amount of point difference. And the reason is because Fiorentina plays in the Serie A that has 38 games, so they play 38 games. And Dortmund play in the Bundesliga, which they only play 34 games. So Fiorentina has more opportunity to gain points, whereas Dortmund has less opportunity. They have 4 less games, meaning that after doing the normalization with the amount of games played in each league, we can see Dortmund actually has the higher home advantage. So we were not able to see that by just calculating the raw point difference. We would have to look at the points per game difference. However, we can still see that Osasuna still has the highest points per game difference, making them the most home-reliant team compared to their away form. Now that we've identified Osasuna as the most home-dependent team across Europe's top leagues, with the worst away form relative to their home performance, we can shift our focus on analyzing just their season in more detail. So we can start by looking at Osasuna's stats at home versus aways. So as you can see, in their home stats, they have 10 wins, whereas away they only have 2 wins. So that's an 8 win difference. So that's a big difference between their home performance and their away performance. We can see in terms of draws, they got 6 draws at home and 10 draws away from home. Losses, they only had 3 losses at home, and they had 7 losses away from home. So we can see that their performance heavily declined when they were on the road, so away from home. Whereas at home they've had pretty good stats: 10 wins, 6 draws, 3 losses. Now in terms of the amount of goals they scored 33 goals at home and only 15 goals away from home. So they scored double the amount, more than actually double the amount of goals at home compared to away. So it seems like they struggled a lot with scoring goals away from home, whereas at home they had no problem with scoring. In terms of goals conceded, they have 23 goals conceded away from at home, and 29 goals conceded away from home. So they concede a little bit more away from home, but it's roughly the same. And then in terms of points, we can see they have only 16 points away from home and 36 points at home. So that's where the 20-point difference came from when we saw it earlier. So we can see that there was a big drop in performance away from home compared to at home. And for now, the only potential reason I can see for that big drop is the goal scoring, because the amount of goals conceded is really the same. They only conceded 6 more away from home, but the big difference is they scored less than half of what they scored at home. So they scored only 15 goals away from home and 33 goals at home. The next thing I want to do is analyze the Osasuna's stats individually, but compared to the whole La Liga. So what I can do is create a variable called sortedf and sort the values of the amount of points scored. I want to also create a rank, so it's called point rank. This will just tell us the rank of the team based on the rest of the teams in the La Liga. We'll really only need the squad column. We need the points, since that's what we're looking at, and the points rank. So let's run that. So this is basically at home. We can see in terms of their home amount of points, they got their 5th in terms of ranking. So we got like Real Madrid, they're like 1st, Atletico 2nd. Osasuna got the 5th most points at home. Well, I guess they're tied with Celta Vigo. So now let's see the same thing, but away from home. Now you can see they dropped heavily. They're 15th now in terms of ranking away from home. So they're the 15th worst away team in terms of like the ranking in the La Liga. They only got 16 points. So that's a big drop. That's 10 places of drop between home and away. So that goes to show how poorly they were in terms of their away performances. And we can see like Valladolid, they're 20th rank away from home. So technically they are the worst away team. But if we look here at home, they're also the worst home team. Instead, we're trying to find the team that's a worst away from home relative to their home performances, because then we can see which team really has the biggest home advantage. Like if they play much better at home compared to away, and in this case, we can see that Osasuna is true in that they play really good at home, because they're ranked 5th at home in La Liga, but they ranked 15th in the La Liga away standings. So that's a 10 rank drop, whereas Valladolid is ranked 20th in both. I just want to do now the same thing that I did for points, except now I want to do it for goals conceded and goals scored. Big difference is I changed this ascending to true, because if you score less goals, that means you have a better rank, right? So if you concede 32 goals, you have a worse rank than someone who conceded 13 goals. Okay, so that's at home, and then we just need to get the away. And then we can see Osasuna is ranked, where are they ranked? They're ranked 13th in terms of the amount of goals conceded at home. And away from home, looks like they're ranked 10th. So we can see, actually, even though they conceded more goals away from home, they're actually ranked better in terms of the amount of goals conceded. That's because a lot of teams are conceding more goals away from home, as you can see, compared to at home. So that's an interesting thing to look at. So in terms of the amount of goals conceded, we can pretty much say that there isn't much of a difference, and in fact maybe they're actually doing better because in terms of this ranking. So now let's look at the amount of goals scored. So at home they're ranked 5th place in terms of the amount of goals scored. They scored 33 goals. So they were up there with some of the good teams in La Liga. Pretty good. And now let's check the away. Oh wow, that's a big drop. They dropped to 17th place in terms of the amount of goals scored. Wow, that's basically that is last place, because these are all tied in last place. So they went from being 5th in terms of the amount of goals scored at home to being last place in the La Liga in terms of amount of goals scored away from home. That's a big drop, and definitely an area that we should look to analyze, because being ranked top 5 scoring team at home in La Liga to rank 17th worst scoring team in La Liga away from home, it looks like the problem with Osasuna is that they're not scoring enough away from home to get those points. So let's try to analyze, why they're not scoring away from home. So I found some stats for Osasuna's every match in the 2024-2025 season. So it has all the matches that they played, and it has stats here, like their shooting stats, so how many goals they scored per game, how many shots they got, how many shots on target percentage, and all these other, shooting stats. And they have it for, all their home and away games. And then they also have goal and shot creation. So I guess this is another thing we could use, another data set. So this has like shot creating opportunities, shot creating actions, shots that led to another shot attempt, goal creating actions. So I've created two CSVs based on that data set. So as you can see, this has all the shooting stats for all Osasuna's games in the 2024-2025 season, all the La Liga games. And then I also have the second data set, which is the shot creation. So we have our two data frames, and then the next thing I want to do is just merge those two together. The next thing I want to do is, since we are looking for home versus away, we need to split it up in terms of, the home and away. And then we need to define basically what columns we need to kind of compare. So we don't need all of these, so we can create a separate list called columns, and we can just copy this list, but kind of like filter it down to what we need. So we don't really need the date, we don't need the time, we don't need this, we don't need the result. We do need goals for. We don't need the opponent. We need goals, we need shots on target, goals per shot, distance, what is this, free kick, penalty kick. Yeah, these are all stuff that we need. Match report, we don't need this. Result. Goals for and goals against we already have up there, so we don't need these. We don't need opponent. We need shot creating opportunity actions. We need this stuff. Okay. And we don't need match report creation. So I don't know what some of the other ones are, but we can just include them. And then the next thing I kind of want to do, calculate the averages. And then create like a new data frame that kind of like compares these two. And there you go. So now it compares all the averages, home versus away. So for example, this is the amount of goals they scored per game, obviously, at home versus away. So on average at home they scored 1.7 goals, and away they scored 0.7 goals. So I can see, as we can see, they are lacking in the amount of goals scored away, which we already saw earlier. We're just confirming again right now. In terms of conceding goals, they concede on average 1.2 goals per game at home and 1.5 goals away from home. We have shots. Now I'm interested in this stat because they have 11.9 shots per game at home and 9.57 shots away, and 3.89 shots on target at home and 2.57 shots on target away from home. So it's definitely less shooting and less shots on target, but still not as low as I thought it would be. I thought it would be much lower compared to basically how many less goals they're scoring, because this is more than double of what they're scoring at away per game. So the fact that they're shooting like similar amount and shots on target is similar kind of doesn't make too much sense. Their shot on target percentage though is much lower, so I guess that accounts for it, 10% lower, so I guess they're not shooting accurately. Goals per shot is lower. Goals per shot on target is lower away from home. Free kicks, penalty kicks, expected goals, they have less expected goals. All these other stats that I don't know what they are. Shot creating attempts, 17 per game and then 20 per game at home, so also less. Pass live, pass dead is pretty much similar. Shots that led to another shot attempt, also lower. Goal creating actions, also lower. As you can see, 2.9 here, 1.3 here. This is more than double of what this is. This helps a little bit. So we see like goal creating actions are less, shot creating actions are less, shots on target percentage is less, shots on target is less, shots are less. So they are creating less opportunities and they are shooting less. But I think what we need to do to figure this out more clearly is kind of break it down by the result. So like group these stats by the wins, the losses, and the draws. So to do that, we just need to copy the same things, except now instead of just calculating the mean, we need to group by the result, which indicates whether it's a win, loss, or a draw. pd.set option, and what we need to do is display dot max columns. So now what this does is now we can see all the columns here. They're not like hidden. Well, as you can see now they're grouped by a result. So this is how many goals they scored on average per game when the result's a draw. So 1.6. This is how many they scored when they lost. So one goal per game on average when the result was a loss. And then when they won, they obviously scored more goals, so two goals. And then when they lose, they obviously concede more on average. When they draw, when they win, they concede less, obviously, on average. But here in the home averages, their shooting, you can see, is pretty much the same for all the results, and same with their shot on target percentage. In fact, they have more shots on target when they draw and lose compared to when they win at home. And they even have a higher shot on target percentage and a higher shot on target percentage when they lose and draw compared to when they win. So it looks like their shooting, obviously at home we saw is great. Their goal scoring is great at home. So it makes sense that there isn't much difference in the amount of shooting and the amount of shots on target. It's pretty much all similar. But now what the interesting thing is, let's check out the average away from home. So we can see already that the amount of goals scored drops for the draws compared to home. So it drops by more than half. For losing also drops more than half the amount of goals. However, for the wins, they're actually scoring more goals on average when they win away from home compared to when they play at home. See, 2.5 goals per game and 2 goals per game at home. So that's interesting. In terms of conceding, they actually concede less when they draw away from home. They concede more when they lose compared to at home. And they also concede more when they win compared to at home. So that's interesting. But now what I'm interested is in these stats, the shooting stats. So in terms of wins, it's pretty much the same, home and away, at like 11.11 shots when they win, both home and away. However, when they lose, oh no, this is when they draw, so drawing is about the same. Winning, they have like 10 shots on target away, so a little bit, 2 shots less compared to when they win at home. It's still pretty much the same. However, the big thing is they only get 6 shots when they lose away from home. However, they get 12 shots when they lose at home. So at home, I guess the problem is not with their shooting, because they're shooting actually more here. They're shooting 12 shots. But away from home, we can see the shooting is the problem, because you can see the big difference here between win, draw, and loss. Win and draw is pretty much the same. However, the loss That's a big difference in the amount of shots they take, so very low, which makes sense why they are losing. And then the amount of shots on target, as you can see at home, it's pretty much the same between the three results. But here, there's big difference. Only one shot on target when they lose, 4.5 shots on target when they win, and 3.3 shots on target when they draw away from home. So in fact, another interesting thing is away from home, when they win, they have more shots on target than when they win at home. So 3.6 at home shots on target and 4.5 shots on target away from home. Next is the shots on target percentage. Shots on target percentage, we can see for drawing, it's lower, much lower than at home, and even lower for when they lose. Only 13% shots on target percentage. So yeah, clearly they're not accurately taking shots, and which will obviously make sense because they are shooting less. And however, we can see that when they win away from home, they have very accurate shooting, so 45% shots on target percentage. But however, at home, they have only 30% shots on target percentage. So what we can see is by grouping it, the problem really lies in the results when they lose. So we need to analyze what's happening in these games when they lose, because clearly they're not shooting enough. Their shots on target percentage is low. Their shots on target is low. They're scoring less. So we really need to check that out. However, here, the shooting here when they lose is not the problem, because they're shooting actually better when they lose compared to when they draw. And here they're shooting on target. Their percentage is higher here when they lose compared to when they win. So clearly the shooting is not a problem here for the home performances, but for the away, it is a problem, because we can see here it's a big difference, a big drop compared to the other two results. And now if we filter out the matches based on the result as losing and the away games, we can see these are all the away games that Osasuna lost. And if you see, they only had here 0 shots on target, 0 shots on target, 1 shot on target, 1 shot on target, 0 shots on target. So if you're not having barely any shots on target, then how are you going to score? So it's clearly something that's not working for Osasuna. Here they had 2 shots on target, and they did score 1 goal here, but they also conceded 3, so that's a separate problem. And here they had 3 shots on target, and they actually scored 2 goals, but they also conceded 4, so that's also a different problem. But like in these games, they didn't even have barely any shots on target. So next thing I want to do is look at like an individual player performance in these games. Back on this website, FBref, and looking at Osasuna's stats in the La Liga. And now I'm going to be looking at like the player stats individually. So what I've found is, if you look at the goals, we can see that the top scorer is this guy, Ante Budimir, and he's by far their highest goal scorer, 21 goals. The second highest goal scorer they have 5 each, so nobody really has come close. So this guy is their goal scorer, and so basically most of their goals go through this guy. So if we can see his home and away performances, maybe we can figure out something from there. So that's what we're going to do. So I've loaded Ante Bundemir's stats, which I got from that website. So this has all his stats for all the 38 La Liga games. And I did the same thing as earlier, divided by home and away. And then these are the columns that are represented in this data set. So this time, instead of calculating the mean, I calculated the sums. just to get more clear picture, like how many goals he scored at home versus away, um, and like how many penalty kicks he got, because like on average he's scoring, if you look at the average number of penalty kicks, it's like kind of gives you less information rather than the amount of penalty kicks. So this is why I chose sum for Budimir stats instead of the mean as we used earlier. So now looking at these comparisons, so we can see he's playing less minutes away compared to how he's playing at home. So he has 15 goals scored at home, but only 6 goals away. So that's half of what he's scoring, less than half. Assist, he has 3 assists at home, 1 assist away. And he has 7 penalty kicks scored at home and just 1 away. So it looks like most of his goals are just inflated by these penalty kicks. Because, I mean, that means he's only scored 8 goals at home and only 5 goals away that are non-penalty kicks. But a big portion of his goals at home are from penalty kicks. In terms of shooting, he's shooting 51 shots in the whole season at home, 40 shots away. Shots on target, it's like similar, 15 versus 14. Expected goals dropped, so he's expected to score less. Except he's actually, so he has 6.9 expected goals, but he's scored 6 goals, so that's pretty similar. That's what he's expected. But looks like at home he's actually over scoring than what he's expected to score. So he's scored 15, but he's expected to score 11 at home. Shot creating actions is less away compared to home. But the main thing that I notice is the amount of penalty kicks that he gets at home, or that Osasuna gets at home compared to away, because I assume he takes all the penalty kicks, so it looks like they get a lot of penalty kicks at home, which probably adds to their success at home versus away, because they're not getting only 1 penalty kick he scored away from home. So there's a possibility. So that's one possibility, that they're just not getting any penalty kicks away from home, and at home looks like they're getting lucky and maybe getting all these penalty kicks, inflating their stats and helping them get more points. So that could be a possibility as well. The next thing I've done is I've looked at the stats, away games where he played less than 60 minutes, and as you can see, Osasuna lost all those games and drew one of them. So it looks like when he doesn't play a lot of minutes, Osasuna also doesn't perform too well. So on the other hand, I checked the amount of minutes, so when he played more than 60 minutes and when he had less than a goal and less than assists. So he had no goals and no assists in those games. And you can see they're all draws or losses. There's no wins here. And what I've noticed is that he still has some shots taking in these. So he has 2 shots on target here, and 5 shots here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. So the next thing we need to do is like figure out, I guess, look at the game analysis, the actual film, to see like how he's shooting. So in this first game against Alaves, he had 2 shots on target. So this was his first shot. This was his second shot on target. So as you can see, they were both very good saves. So there was nothing really he could do about that. This is against Leganes. So this is the first shot. wide open goal, and he just misses it. And this is the second shot. Wide open goal, and misses it as well. So you can see there's a variety in his shooting. So in some of the games he is shooting well, but he's just getting, the goalkeeper is saving it. In other games he's shooting, but he's not shooting very well. Like against the Leganes, he shot right at the goalkeeper, and then the second shot he just completely missed it. So to wrap things up, we started by analyzing the 2024-2025 season data from all of 5 Europe's top leagues. From there, we narrowed our focus down to one team, Osasuna, who stood out as the most home-reliant team across the board. They had the worst away form relative to their home performance. Digging deeper, we saw that their goal away output dropped by more than half, which directly contributed to their poor away results, which meant clearly they had a scoring problem away from home. This lack of goals made more sense when we looked at the underlying stats. They were taking fewer shots and getting even fewer on target in away matches. Naturally, that meant fewer goal-scoring opportunities. We then turned to an individual player, their top scorer, Ante Budimir. His stats told a clear story. He was scoring significantly less away from home. A big part of that was his penalties. He scored 7 at home, but just 1 away. And we also noticed that when Budimir played fewer minutes, his goal contributions dropped and Osasuna struggled to earn points in those games. And even in matches where he played enough minutes but didn't score, it often came down to either excellent goalkeeping from the opponent or just poor finishing from Budimir himself. But what do you think? What changes should Osasuna make to improve their away form next season? It will be interesting to see if they actually will improve their away form next season or not. So let's find out. But for now, thank you for watching, and till the next video.